Welcome to Reversing Hashimoto Show. I'm your show host, Dr. Anshul Gupta, the world expert in Hashimoto's disease. I help people reverse their thyroid conditions by making personalized functional medicine plans. You can work with me with any part of the country now by making virtual functional medicine appointments. To book an appointment, look at the show notes. In this show, I am going to get experts from all over the world who are going to share latest information that will help you to reclaim your life back from dreadful thyroid disease. So welcome here. And today we have Dr. Deb Matthew with us. Welcome, Dr. Deb.
Hey, it's so good to be here.
Same here. Let me introduce you first, okay? So Dr. Deb Matthew MD is America's happy hormones doctor. She's a best-selling author, international speaker, educator, wife, and mom of 4 boys. After suffering for years with fatigue and irritability due to hormonal imbalances, her quest to resolve her personal health led her to change everything about her practice of medicine. She has been featured on national podcasts, radio, and broadcast shows, including NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox. Wonderful, Dr. Deb. That is a great kind of bio that you have over here.
Hey, well, it's so good to talk about Hashimoto's because this is something that I have way too much personal experience with, unfortunately.
I know, yes. I would definitely, we will like to hear your story because, people always kind of, resonate and they don't even know that several of us have gone through thyroid disorders ourselves and have, like our personal journeys through which we know that there is so much more to Hashimoto's than just giving that particular hormone. So please, if you don't mind sharing your story of how you struggle with Hashimoto's so that all the listeners can benefit from it.
Sure. Well, going all the way back to high school, to be honest, I remember that napping was my favorite hobby. I was somebody who needed like 10 hours of sleep just to function like a normal human being. And then when I was in medical school, on several occasions, some of the doctors that were training me looked at my neck and said, "Your thyroid is enlarged. You should go get it checked." But I went to the doctor who checked my blood test and said that it was normal. And so I just carried on. And it wasn't until after I finished my residency, I was tired all the time. I was cold all the time. I took a sweater everywhere, even in the summer, because air-conditioned movie theaters and restaurants would just make me shiver uncontrollably. And the refrigeration section at the grocery store was the worst. But after I finished my residency, that's when I was ready to start my family, and I wasn't able to get pregnant. And I went back in, and this time they did a thyroid panel again, and I found out that, in fact, I was hypothyroid. And I had maybe a more forward-thinking doctor because he even tested me and told me that I had Hashimoto's. Most of the time, people don't get that diagnosis of Hashimoto's, but I did know that. So I went on the thyroid pills. I went on to have 4 babies. So obviously it did something. But all those years, I still was exhausted all the time. I was cold all the time. I had this dry skin, dull hair, couldn't lose weight no matter how hard I tried. And I didn't even realize that there could be more for me because, of course, when at medical school, they teach us if your TSH, your standard screening test, is normal, then it's not your thyroid. And so I just assumed it was me, that I was just a cold-natured person who needed more sleep than everybody else and didn't have very good hair. And eventually, by this point, I'm in my late 30s, and I started to get really anxious. I woke up in the middle of the night with panic attacks for no reason. And I was flying off the handle at my kids way too often. And I just felt so guilty. I just felt like the worst mom ever. My husband, gosh, my poor husband, he's the one that bore the brunt of my Wicked Witch of the West impersonation. And at this point, I knew that this was not normal. But nothing in my medical training helped me understand what was happening to me. And what changed everything for me is when I read a book about women's hormones written by Suzanne Summers. And right, as medical doctors, we don't want to get our medical information from celebrities, right? I didn't want to read that book, but I knew that I had to do something. I knew that what was happening to me was just not normal. And honestly, when I read that book, it completely changed everything because I read the stories about the women who were just like me and how much better they felt once they got their hormones in balance. And I learned from Suzanne Summers, not from medical school, that there's all these other things that we can do for thyroid besides just taking a pill. So once my mind was opened, I learned that there are places that doctors really can go to be trained in this different approach where we're really looking for the root cause of things. We're not just putting a Band-Aid over symptoms. And my entire life changed. I got my energy back. My kids got their mom back. My husband got his wife back, and I got my life back. But I couldn't go back to just writing prescriptions all day long the way they trained me at medical school, because that just didn't make any sense anymore. So I retired from my old practice. And now for the last 15 years, I've been helping men and women get their hormones back in balance so they can get their life back, live their purpose, and really, get the most out of their life, because I believe that living well is the best medicine.
Wow. I'm sure a lot of the people who are listening over here can relate to your story, because each and every person has very similar story. The good part about, like telling our stories is that now people can relate that, okay, they are not the only one who are suffering. Because as you might have realized, a lot of these patients who go to their doctors have been told that all of these symptoms are in their head. They are making it up, and they're always being dismissed. That, okay, well, just take this medicine, your TSH is perfectly fine, just go home, and nothing else could be done.
It's either you're depressed or you're lazy or you're secretly snacking on, Little Debbie snack cakes and not telling me, right? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, you brought an important point. And a lot of thyroid patients, especially Hashimoto's, do struggle with losing weight. They're trying a lot of things. They're trying the medicines. Sometimes they're even trying the diet, sometimes trying, all sorts of like supplements and things, but still they fail. So tell us more about it. What do you think might be the underlying reason of this resistant weight loss that people with Hashimoto's go through?
Well, we know, of course, that thyroid hormone is so important for weight loss. Thyroid hormone sets our metabolic rate. So it literally tells our body how many calories to burn. It's your thermostat. And so if your internal thermostat is set too low, then your metabolism slows down and you're just literally every cell in your body is generating less energy. And so if your thyroid hormone is not optimal, if it's still kind of on the low side, you're just not burning as many calories as your next door neighbor whose thyroid is fine. So you and your next door neighbor can both join Weight Watchers or do whatever the next, diet fad is, or you can join the gym and you can be walking on the treadmill the exact same amount as your next door neighbor, and yet she'll lose 10 pounds and you'll be stuck, which is so frustrating. And I talk to women all the time, and of course men too, but Hashimoto's is more common in women. But I talk to women all the time who are trying so hard to convince me, and I believe them, but to convince, they're not overeating. They're not sitting on the couch all day long. Like, they are doing all the things and they're so frustrated. They feel so hopeless. In fact, I want to tell you the story, if it's okay, about one of my patients who came to see me, and she had already been to her regular doctor because she was trying all the things. She just couldn't lose weight no matter what she tried. And she went to her doctor because she knows obviously something's got to be wrong here. And he ran all the tests and he said, everything is normal. And she felt just dismayed and angry. Like, her cholesterol was normal, her blood pressure was normal, her TSH was normal, her blood sugar was normal, everything was normal. So what can be wrong? And if thyroid hormones, not just that TSH, but if the thyroid hormones inside your body aren't doing their job, then you're just not going to be burning calories. You're not going to be able to lose weight. And another really important point is thyroid hormone is really important for telling your body to burn fat for fuel, because otherwise what ends up happening is you store carbohydrates, you store in your muscles as glycogen, in your liver, it's stored as glycogen. So if you go out and start walking or whatever, you're going to start to use up the stored glycogen. That's like your earliest source of energy. And then once it's used up, eventually your body will switch over and start to burn fat for fuel. But if you can't burn fat for fuel effectively because you don't have enough functional thyroid hormones in your system, you burn off the glycogen, you get tired out, you stop, you eat something, store more glycogen to replace your stores, and you never touch that roll on your belly.
Absolutely. So a lot of females, are even taking thyroid hormone, external thyroid hormone. And if, let's say, we presume that it is a deficiency of thyroid hormone, because of that, they're not able to lose weight. So when they do start taking thyroid hormone, that should fix it. But we see that, it's still not being fixed. So why is that so?
Yes. And I lived this. I started on the thyroid hormones. I don't remember the date, but it was 10 years that I took that darn Synthroid pill. My TSH was normal, although looking back, it was always kind of at the upper end of normal. Like it was probably never quite optimal, but because it was in the normal range, I was told it was normal. And I was a doctor at that point, but that's what I was taught. If your TSH is in the normal range, you're normal, so it can't be your thyroid hormone. But the problem is that pill that we're given, Synthroid or levothyroxine or whatever the generic version is, that is T4, which is the main hormone that comes out of your thyroid gland. But T4 doesn't really do anything. It goes around and around in your bloodstream. But once it gets into your tissues, into your cells, your body has to convert it into T3. And that's the hormone that activates your cells and tells your body to generate more energy and burn more calories and burn fat for fuel. So we as doctors were just taught to assume that if we give you the right amount of T4, all of those other steps are automatically going to happen. And the reality is, for a lot of women, they're not able to activate the T4 into T3. So they take their pill, and that makes their TSH level look normal and even their T4 level. So sometimes doctors will measure the T4 level. So the labs, when you go to the doctor, look fine, but yet inside things aren't working. So for 10 years, I was tired and cold. I felt no different. I could forget to take my thyroid pill for a whole week and not even notice because it wasn't really doing all that much for me. And that is such a common problem. And there's a whole list of reasons why somebody may not be doing a good job converting their T4 over into T3. And so at this point, it's not just a matter of change your thyroid dose. The real solution here is figure out the things that are going wrong, that you're not able to use the thyroid, so that all of a sudden your metabolism can pick back up again.
Absolutely. And, you and me, see it each and every day that people have been taking medicines for years and years, and they think that they're doing the right thing, that their body should be getting the right thyroid hormone. But in reality, as you said, that conversion from T4 to T3 is not happening. So that's the reason that the body is not performing optimally. So why don't we deeper into, first of all, why that conversion from T4 and T3 might not be happening in Hashimoto's. And obviously the next step after that is that what people can do to improve that conversion from T4 to T3. But why? Let's first talk about the why. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the things maybe that if I can start with is the why that for me was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back and what really made me kind of crash and burn, that prompted me to find a new solution. And that was what we call estrogen dominance. So in women over the age of 35, as our female hormones are shifting, as we're kind of tippy-toeing towards menopause, often what happens is our estrogen level is still okay at this point, but our progesterone level goes down. Progesterone and estrogen are the two that go up and down over the menstrual cycle. Progesterone is the calming hormone. It helps us sleep soundly through the night. It helps keep our periods, more regular and less problematic, helps prevent PMS symptoms. So when progesterone levels go down, we tend to feel more anxious and irritable, negative, critical, impatient. We're not always the nicest version of ourselves. And I have a theory, completely unscientific theory, but you know how we have all these Karens out there who are kicking up a storm and misbehaving? I predict that a lot of those Karens have estrogen dominance. They've lost their progesterone. It's just making them cranky and their things are flying out of their mouth when they shouldn't. So estrogen dominance is really common. It can cause heavier periods, more PMS. And so that's why a lot of women in their 40s end up having things like hysterectomies because they're having all this bleeding. But if we could balance hormones, we could help. So how this ties to thyroid and weight loss is twofold. One is estrogen dominance all by itself can cause women to gain weight, especially in the hips, thighs, and butt. And plus, when you are estrogen dominant, one of the other things that happens is it gets in the way of thyroid hormones doing their job. And so now, even if you're taking your thyroid pill, your thyroid hormone isn't converting properly. It's not able to attach to the cells properly. And so now you're gaining weight because of your thyroid. And thyroid, you can just gain it anywhere. So estrogen dominance is a common reason. Another common reason for thyroid not to work that well is cortisol problem. So cortisol is your main stress hormone. Lord knows we've all got stress these days, right? Between wars and pandemics and all the stuff going, all our regular life stressors. When we're stressed, cortisol goes up to help us cope with stress. And in the short term, that's a good thing. That helps us cope. The problem is when we have stress day in and day out, our cortisol levels become chronically elevated. And when cortisol levels are chronically elevated, one of the things that it does is it shuts down that conversion to the active T3. And if you think about this, it's our body's mechanism of trying to help us. When we have stress in our lives, our body doesn't know the difference between stress from, a horrible boss, or you're going through a divorce, or somebody's sick in your family versus war and famine. And so if there's a famine out there, you want to try to conserve energy. And so just like to conserve energy, you would turn down the thermostat in your home, your body basically turns down your own internal thermostat so that you can conserve energy and survive the famine. And so when cortisol goes up, that's a marker for stress. So it shuts down thyroid conversion in order to help you survive the famine. And of course, most of the time for us, there is no real famine. And so instead of helping us, it actually hinders us. And going back even farther, most likely we, the modern generation, are all ancestors of people who were really good at conserving energy, because the people who weren't very good probably did perish in the famines. So at this point, it's an evolutionary thing that was supposed to help us, but it's not really working so well for us. So stress is a really big cause for thyroid hormones in your system to not work well, even if you're already taking a thyroid pill. So estrogen dominance and stress, cortisol problems, those are two. But there's more. Another one is digestive, the kinds of bacteria that live in our gut microbiome, like the probiotics, that ends up being really important for processing our thyroid hormones. So if you don't have the right, good, healthy probiotics living in your digestive tract, you may not be converting your T4 into T3 and activating it the way that you should. And a clue is if you have IBS, or if you just have irregular bowel movements or bloating, gas, digestive symptoms, that's a clue. But sometimes we don't have any digestive symptoms, and yet there could still be a problem with our gut microbiome. So a healthy gut microbiome is actually really important for thyroid function. And one more is, in order to make that conversion to activate that thyroid hormone, you have to have enough of certain really important vitamins and minerals. And two of the ones that are especially important are zinc and selenium. And sometimes we don't get enough of those in our diet. Sometimes it's because we're not eating the right foods. Sometimes it's because the foods that are available to us at the grocery store, because of our modern farming practices, aren't the greatest. But it also could be, even if, and I see this all the time, even if you're doing a pretty good job, you're trying to eat your vegetables, if your digestive tract isn't really optimally healthy, you may not be digesting and absorbing those nutrients and getting them in your bloodstream where you need them and getting them inside your cells. So you need enough of the right nutrients, you need a healthy digestive tract, optimal hormone balance. Those are some of the really important things that affect how well your body is using your thyroid hormones.
Wonderful. I think it was really comprehensive. I think that, touched on all those important points, which most people have no idea. And most people don't even think that this conversion of T4 to T3 is so complex. It is happening in each and every cell of your body, especially in your gut and other places. And most people have no idea, how is my thyroid connected to my gut, right? But the new research is so promising, as you mentioned about the gut microbiome and things. So let me ask you this question, when you're seeing your patients, your clients, do you evaluate each and every person for all these disorders by ordering testing? Or is it basically you have a stepwise process that you go through, or maybe just clinical picture is what gives you hints? How do you do that?
When people come in to see me, I sort of give them a couple of options. We have the option where we can kind of go by symptom, we always measure the full thyroid panel. We always want to measure the T4, the T3, what are your antibody levels, reverse T3, which is another important marker for how well you're converting your T4 to your T3. So we always do that. We always do some basic tests, like their female hormones, the cortisol level, et cetera. And then we have a system that we follow where we're going step by step. And we're always thinking about 4 pillars of health. So we're thinking about hormone balance, including thyroid. We're thinking about gut health. We're thinking about toxins, because we haven't even started talking about toxins yet, and lifestyle habits. So sometimes we do that lab work and get started with our lifestyle program. And for other people, either they've already kind of tried the lifestyle or they just really want to know. And then we start off right up front looking at all of these different labs, a much more comprehensive look, so that we can really understand where we need to focus in order to get to the root cause of the problem.
That's great. That is exactly, I feel that we need to do is that I feel, the functional medicine or, these personalized medicines is dependent on person to person. We cannot have each and every person in the same bucket. And that's where, your approach of being so personal, okay, well, where the person is, what he or she has done before. And based on that, you take those next steps. A lot of people, feel that they have to invest heavily in a lot of testing. But, people can start from a lot of these things on working on their gut and all that stuff. Doesn't matter what the test results show. And some people have done a lot of these testing and, as you said, have worked a lot of stuff on them, but they're still not getting better. And that's where the testing could be very nice.
Yes.
Good. So now we know the why of why they're not getting better, so what they can do to kind of get better in terms of the conversion from T4 to T3. What tips or things that you will have for them?
Okay. So one of the things that I would say to start with that we all can do that's free, it's easy, simple, but hard at the same time, is reduce stress, because stress is a huge cause of hormone imbalances for women. And partly it's blocking that T4 to T3 conversion, but also cortisol really is important to regulate your immune system. And of course, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition. Your immune system and inflammation is part of the problem here. So balancing out cortisol, reducing stress can be helpful on all of those fronts. So some really simple tips would be deep breathing. Another simple tip would be stretching, and of course, there's meditation, there's yoga, there's the things that we hear about all the time. But I'm a very concrete person, so I like to really understand things in a very concrete way. So when you do deep breathing exercises, when we are calm and relaxed, like when you're sleeping, right, we tend to deep, slow, and deep. But when you're stressed, when cortisol is going through your system, we tend to do fast, shallow breaths. That's just unconscious. So if you're at your computer or if you're rushing home from the grocery store to get dinner on the table, we often tend to breathe shallow and fast. And our brain notices, shallow, fast breathing, that means danger, releases more cortisol and creates more stress. So on the flip side, if we do deep, slow breaths, it tells our brain things are okay, we're safe, and it reduces cortisol. So you can kind of go backwards and fix the problem. With the stretching too, when we're stressed, we tend to kind of go like this, kind of in the fetal position. And when we're all day long at our computers, we're also kind of hunched like this, kind of like we're in the fetal position. And if you can take a break and stretch, open out your chest, lift up your neck. So kind of you're exposing your vulnerable neck, your belly, but it's sort of telling your brain that you're safe. So yes, it's stretching your muscles. That feels good. But it's also sending a message to your brain, everything is okay, and it can actually help to calm your cortisol. So those are just two sort of different tips that may be helpful. But all the things that we can do to help reduce stress are really important. So that's one thing. Another is for gut health, what we eat makes such a big difference. So we know healthy gut, healthy hormones, but also a healthy gut is so important for a healthy immune system because, of course, most of our immune system lives right along the lining of our digestive tract. We know that autoimmunity has to do with leaky gut. Gut health is so important to immune system health and autoimmunity. So in order to have a healthy gut, it's really important what foods you're eating. So we want whole foods, the foods that are found in nature, not packaged foods full of the chemicals, preservatives, artificial sweeteners, colors, all of those kinds of things. Another is we want for inflammation, we want to dampen inflammation in Hashimoto's. So we want to calm down on the starchy carbohydrates because sugar, lots of starchy carbohydrates tend to drive inflammation. So lower on the starchy carbohydrates, minimal on the sugar as best as possible. And then we want lots of fruits and vegetables because those are going to provide the body with the vitamins and the minerals that we need in order to have healthy hormones. And in particular, I would say that nuts have a special sort of place in the conversation here because they've got lots of fiber, which we like. They have magnesium, which is an important mineral for hormones. And they're also a good source of zinc. And zinc is one of the really important nutrients for conversion from T4 to T3. So for so many years, we told people that nuts were high in fat and they had to lay off the nuts. But now we know that nuts are actually really helpful. And for thyroid, especially Brazil nuts, because Brazil nuts contain selenium. And selenium is an important hormone for thyroid function. So 3 or 4 Brazil nuts a day give you the selenium that your thyroid needs. So a couple of other things about how you eat is also important. So if we can slow down, chew our food, relax while we're eating, it actually helps us to digest our food better. If we're shoveling in our food as fast as we can on the fly, our body is in a more stressed response and it's not going to do as good of a job digesting our food. So you don't get the benefit of the nutrients in quite the same way. Intermittent fasting is also worth talking about because intermittent fasting is a really good way to give your metabolism a little boost because we're talking about, we want weight loss here. That's what we're talking about. So we're trying to optimize our hormone health. But intermittent fasting is a way to help boost your metabolism. And so one of the ways to do intermittent fasting that most people find the easiest is to just eat your breakfast a little bit later, make sure that you're eating dinner a little early-ish so that you, let's say, eat your breakfast by about 11, finish eating your supper by 7 p.m., and then you fast overnight, and then you eat again at 11. So you're eating healthy foods in about an 8-hour window during the day, and then you're fasting for about 16 hours overnight. And the good thing about intermittent fasting is you don't have to be really rigid with this. If you're sticking to the gist of it, you don't have to do it every single day. You don't have to be regimented about it, but it is something that is showing benefit in boosting metabolic rate and helping us to do a better job of burning fat for fuel, which is what people with Hashimoto's have a challenge with a lot of the time. Another really important lifestyle thing that we can do to boost metabolism is resistance exercise, muscle building exercise. So I told everybody, I used to be a fitness instructor before I went to medical school. We told everybody you needed to do like that long cardio in order to burn fat. And if you have Hashimoto's, you can do long cardio till the cows come home, and it can be really frustrating when you're not burning the fat very effectively. But it turns out that if you do resistance exercise where you're doing muscle building, so things like push-ups and lifting weights or using the bands, when you build muscle, your muscle is really what drives your metabolic rate. And so if you can build just a little bit of muscle, that muscle is going to burn calories 24/7. Whereas if you get on the treadmill and you walk for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, and then how it's got that little dial that tells you how many calories you burned, and it's super depressing, right? Like you burned like enough to, one Oreo cookie or something like that. And as soon as you step off the treadmill, the calorie burning stops. Whereas if you did resistance exercise to build a little bit of muscle, and for women, I think sometimes women are afraid we're going to look like, big muscular He-Man, but that's never going to happen. But if you can just build a little bit of muscle, that muscle is going to speed up your metabolic rate. You're going to burn more calories. The calories are going to come from fat too. So, and the good news is you don't have to spend as much time. It doesn't have to take a whole hour. So with taking 20 minutes of time, you can actually get more benefit than if you spent a whole hour on the treadmill. If you are going to go on the treadmill, because it's not that cardio is bad, high intensity intervals are going to give you so much more weight loss benefit than the moderate walking. So fast as you can for 30 seconds or a minute, and then slow down to recover. And then as fast as you can for 30 seconds or a minute and slow down to recover. Those spurts of energy do so much more for your metabolism than the long, slow exercise. So those are some of my best lifestyle tips. And then one more maybe controversial thing is a lot of women with thyroid function have been told that they need to steer clear of cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower because it slows thyroid. And the reality is you would have to really make it like a full-time job eating those vegetables in order to have much of an effect, a negative effect on your thyroid. But they have tremendous benefits on your other hormones, especially how you process estrogen. And too much estrogen interferes with thyroid function. So I vote for yes, 1 serving a day of cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprout, something like that. 1 serving a day. It's going to do wonders for your female hormones so that they can help and not hinder your thyroid.
Oh my gosh, you were like, on target with so many practical tips. A lot of people, like keep on talking about things in vague about, as you said, even in stress management, do meditation, do these things. But you shared so many practical tips that people can start doing today. This was awesome. Like people can understand now that with just basic lifestyle changes, they can accomplish so much with their thyroid. So this was great. Like I really like those practical tips of yours. Maybe you can share some things about the supplements too. Like, if you feel that there are some certain supplements which can boost the metabolism or maybe improve the conversion, that you have seen some differences with those.
So I'm going to give some supplements, but I do have to say, if somebody had just found the perfect weight loss metabolism booster pill, we would all be so happy. So there is no like magic pill. So there are some things that can be helpful that are worth talking about. But the lifestyle factors are just so much more important than any pill. And it's just silly to think that you can do all the wrong things with your lifestyle and take some vitamins and it's going to fix it. But some of the things that can be helpful. So taking minerals, because we know we need zinc, we need selenium, we need enough iron in our bodies for thyroid function, we need iodine. So getting enough minerals, so like a good multivitamin that will have the minerals in it is a reasonable thing to do. I generally don't tell people to take like a zinc supplement, for example, unless we have an opportunity to measure what your levels are. So it's okay. Taking a zinc supplement isn't harmful. A lot of people have been taking zinc supplements over the last year, but there's a balance between minerals. And so if you have Hashimoto's and you rush out and just, start taking a whole bunch of zinc, it's not necessarily going to help the Hashimoto's, and sometimes it causes problems. So I'm a fan of measuring things in order to really know exactly what you need. But taking a multivitamin that's going to have the trace minerals in it is certainly a good idea, because even if you're eating a good diet, you're not necessarily always getting everything that you need in the food. So a multivitamin that's going to have the minerals. Another one that I think is useful is omega-3. So a fish oil supplement, because it's very difficult for us to get enough omega-3s in our diet. The food that's available at the grocery store just doesn't have an awful lot of omega-3s in it. A good source of omega-3s is fish, but it has to be wild-caught fish. If you're eating farm-raised fish, they don't have omega-3s in them either. And at the grocery store by law in the United States, it has to say whether it's wild-caught or farm-raised. So you can tell when you're buying the fish which one it is. Hard to eat enough fish. If we go overboard on eating fish, then we have to worry about mercury, which is bad for your thyroid and can be one of the triggers for Hashimoto's. So eat wild-caught fish. But taking a fish oil supplement can be a good idea. And two tips for fish oil. One is it really does need to be a good brand because we want it to be free of mercury and we want it not to be going rancid because it's an oil, it's delicate, it can go rancid. So it really is worth splurging for a good quality fish oil supplement. And the other thing is some people find that if they take fish oil, they get fish burps and it bothers them. But if you keep your fish oil capsules in the freezer, then when you swallow them, they'll be frozen and they'll get farther down your digestive tract before they burst open. So they're less likely to cause fish burps. So fish oil is very anti-inflammatory. And of course, Hashimoto's is an inflammatory autoimmune condition. It's important for thyroid function and it's important for weight loss because if we take two groups of people and we give them the same diet and exercise program, but we give half of them the fish oil capsules and half of them don't get them, the fish oil capsule team is going to lose a little bit more weight. So fish oil would be another supplement that I would recommend. A third one to think about is curcumin. Curcumin is another very anti-inflammatory nutrient. It's found in turmeric, which is the plant. Curcumin is the nutrient in the turmeric. And of course, that's what makes curry powder yellow. So eating things with curry in them, using turmeric as a spice, taking curcumin as a supplement. These are all natural ways to reduce inflammation. Inflammation, of course, is, your thyroid is inflamed if you have Hashimoto's. The full name for it is autoimmune thyroiditis, and anything with an itis is inflammation. So we're reducing inflammation. But when you have a lot of us, especially if you've gained weight, because of your thyroid, that weight makes you more inflamed too. So when we've got all this inflammation going through our bloodstream, that makes us gain more weight. So we get caught in this cycle of inflammation. So curcumin is another supplement that can sometimes be helpful to kind of calm down inflammation and can be somewhat helpful.
Awesome. I think those are great supplements. Most of them, don't have any side effects. That's the biggest thing about them. But as you said, make sure that, these agree with your system. And then obviously taking any supplements, you just have to be careful. So, but I think those are great tips.
Can I say one more? Because I forgot the most important one of all, and that's vitamin D. So vitamin D regulates your immune system. And if your vitamin D level isn't that great, that's a risk factor for getting Hashimoto's in the first place. So we all need to have optimal levels of vitamin D. And again, I'm a big fan of getting your vitamin D level tested. So if that's, that would be the place to start, know what your level is. In the United States, the range goes 30 to 100. 65 is the halfway mark. So we want you to be somewhere in the middle of the range, not sitting way down at the bottom, 31, 32. But vitamin D is so important. And a lot of people want to know how much should they take? Well, you need to take enough to get your level in the middle of the range. So you can start somewhere, get your level rechecked and see if it got you where you need to be.
Awesome. Yes. And it's so easy to check, vitamin D, each and every labs can check it easily. So, easy test to do. And as you said, most people, for what I've seen is that they get it checked. Oh, well, vitamin D levels are low and they're sitting at 30 or 32, and then the doctor told them, okay, they don't have to take it. People are scared that, okay, well, if I take some vitamin D, my levels are going to be so high that I'm going to land up in the hospital. I'm going to be toxic. And I was like, I have never seen a person being toxic in medical literature. Literally, there are only a few case studies. So I said, you will not be that person. Don't worry. So
yes, I liken it to water. Like if you drink too much water, you could die. But for most of us, if we struggle to drink enough water, you have to go way overboard in order to drink so much water that it would make you sick. So vitamin D, I sort of feel the same way.
Great. Wonderful. I mean, when you're talking about things which could affect, people's ability to lose weight and things, we touched briefly on the toxin piece of it. So I do feel that a lot of times, the toxins also hijack the whole hormonal system that also creates this weight resistance. Do you kind of agree or do you see that also?
All the time. And I really do tend to work with a population of women who have pretty good lifestyle habits already before they come to see me. And they're just so frustrated because it hasn't worked. So toxins in the environment, we're all exposed to tens of thousands every day. And the reality is most of them were never tested to know what they do, but a lot of them are hormone disruptors. So they muck up how our hormones work. And the two of the first hormones that get into trouble are thyroid and cortisol. And of course, cortisol makes us gain belly fat. Thyroid makes us gain weight everywhere. They muck up our female hormones. So now we've got menstrual problems and that estrogen dominance that makes us gain weight on our hips, butts, and thighs. So a lot of these chemicals are what we call obesogens. which means they make us gain weight. And another problem is when you get more chemicals in your body, a lot of them are fat soluble. So we store them in our fat cells. So we will grow more bigger, fatter fat cells to store these toxins. So now we got more toxins building up, messing up how our thyroid is working. And that makes us gain more weight and we store more toxins and it just becomes this vicious cycle. So if you can lose weight successfully, you're actually flushing some of those toxins out of your system. But also if we can do things to help flush toxins out of your system, it can help your hormones work better so that it can help you to be more successful losing weight. So it's kind of a two-way street, but minimizing our exposure to toxins is helpful. So like one simple tip that people can do is to swap the plastic in their kitchen for glass and don't ever microwave in plastic because that pulls the toxins from the plastic into your food. So there's some simple things that we can do. There are some ways that we can help flush toxins from our system. So intermittent fasting is helpful. There are some supplements that can be helpful, but toxins are a huge problem for people with thyroid hormone issues.
Absolutely. So the problem is that there are so many toxins in the environment, heavy metals, mold, environmental toxins and things. Yeah. Do you see in Hashimoto's any particular toxin, causing more issues than the others?
Well, one of the ones that some of the ones that we think of would be mercury. So mercury can trigger Hashimoto. So that's one. And then another one would be things like bromide and halides, and chloride, because these are all related to like iodine, chlorine, bromine. They're all related. And so sometimes they shove iodine away out of place in your thyroid and it gets replaced with some of these other molecules instead. And then you can't make thyroid hormone properly. So these are all things that can be tested for. But the big but is if you've listened to this summit and now you march into your doctor's office and you say, I really want you to measure my full thyroid panel, you have a small chance that maybe they will do it for you. You'll never get a reverse T3 level, but they may be able to talk them into testing your free T3. You may be able to get them to do a TPO antibody level. But if you want to know your chlorine level or your mercury level, or if you have the right gut microbiome, just understand that that's not what we were trained in medical school. And I recall, I'm so embarrassed by this, but I recall when I was a new doctor, another, somebody who was behind me in their training, a resident came to me and they had this thyroid patient and they didn't really know what to do. And I remember sort of rolling my eyes a little bit going, oh, thyroid is so easy. All you have to do is prescribe the Synthroid and you repeat the test. And if their TSH is normal, we did it. I had no idea. And your doctor doesn't either. So when you go in, please give them grace and just know they don't know what they don't know. They mean well. They want to help you. We were not taught any of this in medical school.
Absolutely. And this is an important point that yes, some of these tests can be done by regular labs, but it's also important to know that a lot of the tests like toxins, checking microbiome and all those things are not done by regular labs. So your doctor might not even be aware of it. So if you go to a doctor's office, they say, no, that cannot be done. Don't get disheartened. This is where, you find a person like you, or a functional medicine doctor who knows and who has the ability to check these things and exactly where your problem is and that can be fixed then. So that's great. I mean, gosh, we have covered so many different topics and so many things over here. I think we are running out of time. So any parting words, any other tips or things that you have for people to share over here?
Yeah, I believe that all of us need to take responsibility for our own health. We can't wait for our doctor to fix us or to give us the magic pill because unfortunately, we as doctors, we're not that smart. We don't have that magic solution, but all of us can take some steps. We can do some small things in the right direction to start living a healthier lifestyle, eating a healthier diet, moving our body just a little bit more. And if we can all take responsibility for our own health, even if it means looking for another kind of practitioner who can help you if you're not getting everything that you need from your doctor, those are really important steps in the journey to really feeling your best. Because I believe that we all deserve to be well, to be able to get off prescription drugs. You still may need some thyroid support, but antidepressants, sleeping pills, some of these other things you may have ended up on as a result of not feeling good, et cetera. I believe that there are ways that we can help diminish the need for those things. And I believe that we all deserve to love the way we feel.
Wow, that is great. Those are great tips. Where can people find you? Because I'm sure after listening to what you said, people will love to know where they can find you and how they can work with you.
So my practice is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my website is signaturewellness.org. So I wrote a book to help women understand if their symptoms could be from a hormone imbalance, because that's like the biggest question. You don't feel good, but you're not really sure why you don't feel good. And could it be your hormones, your thyroid, your cortisol, et cetera? So I wrote a book. It's called This Is Not Normal, A Busy Woman's Guide to Symptoms of Hormone Imbalance. And it's a quick read. It's got lots of lists and like quizzes so you can check off, like, is it still your thyroid? Is it cortisol? Is it something else? And so I think you'll have the link, right, that they can download a free copy of the book just so that they can at least figure out for themselves. And it's got tips for how to get started. And really importantly, it's got tips for how to talk to your doctor, what to say. And if your doctor is not the right one, it's got some resources for how can you find somebody that may be able to help you.
Wonderful. I'm sure, those are great resources. And I'm so thankful that, you shared all these practical tips. I think that was the best thing that people need at this point of time, to know what they can do today. And then if they're stuck, they know what else needs to be done to get better. So thank you so much for sharing all these things. Really pleasure talking to you today.
It was great to talk to you. Hopefully nobody will suffer for 10 years like I did before they get help.
Yes. Well, if anybody's suffering, they know who to go to kind of get it fixed. So I hope people get that message that they don't have to suffer. There is hope for them to get better. You just have to take the right action, as you rightly said. Wonderful.